There comes a moment in life when you look at yourself, not in the mirror, but deep within, and realize you've been living as a version of yourself that doesn't quite fit anymore. Maybe it once did, maybe it was necessary, but now it feels like you're walking in someone else's shoes. That version of you, shaped by expectations, past mistakes, old dreams and silent compromises, has done its job. But it's time to rebuild. Not because you're broken, but because you've outgrown who you used to be. This isn't about chasing perfection or proving yourself to the world. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about removing everything that's not you, the noise, the pressure, the armor, until what's left is someone whole, clear, and grounded in truth. And here's the hard part. This work, this rebuilding, has to happen in silence. No applause, no validation. Just you, choosing yourself every single day. We live in a world that demands your attention, drains your focus, and tries to convince you that fixing yourself means consuming more. More advice, more routines, more productivity hacks. But what if the path forward isn't in doing more, but in returning to yourself? Slowing down, listening, letting go of the versions of you that were built on fear, survival, or approval. Rebuilding doesn't begin with action. It begins with awareness, with the quiet but brave decision to turn your focus inward, not as an escape, but as a revolution. Every habit you form, every thought you question, every emotion you learn to sit with, it all matters, because the person you're becoming is shaped not in grand gestures, but in the small, quiet choices you make when no one's watching. So this episode isn't a list of hacks. It's a call to come home to yourself, to reclaim your energy from the people, patterns, and problems that don't deserve it, to stop running and start rebuilding, one breath, one habit, one boundary at a time. Let's walk through the 25 essential pillars that will help you rebuild your life, not in theory, but in practice. These aren't just ideas, they're invitations. Each one is a step toward becoming the clearest, calmest, most powerful version of yourself. Not someday, but now. Because the truth is, the new you is not something you create from scratch. It's someone you uncover when you finally have the courage to focus on you every single day. Rediscover your passions. There was a time when your eyes lit up at the mere thought of something, a project, a place, an idea, a dream. It didn't have to make sense to anyone else. It just stirred something deep inside you. But somewhere along the way, that spark was buried. Life got louder. Responsibilities took over. You started doing what you had to do instead of what you loved to do. You stopped asking yourself what made you come alive and started asking what was expected of you. And slowly, the flame dimmed. Rediscovering your passions isn't about returning to childish fantasies or unrealistic dreams. It's about reconnecting with the part of you that felt alive before the world told you who you should be. It's about peeling back the layers of stress, duty, and performance to find the heartbeat underneath it all. You don't need to blow up your life or change everything overnight. But you do need to start listening to what still excites you, the things you think about when you're alone, the activities that make time disappear, the ideas that whisper to you when the world is quiet. This isn't optional. Passion is not a luxury, it's fuel. When you ignore it, you burn out. When you honor it, you wake up. And the truth is, you can't rebuild yourself without rediscovering what matters to you on a soul level. Passion gives direction. It makes discipline easier. It makes the hard days worth it. But first, You have to give yourself permission to explore again, to be curious, to be bad at something new, to want something more for yourself, even if no one else understands it yet. Start small. Go back to the books, the music, the art, the hobbies, the conversations that once gave you life. Revisit the places you loved. Reconnect with the questions you used to ask before the answers became too painful or inconvenient. Take yourself seriously, not in a rigid or perfectionistic way, but in a sacred way. Because that creative spark, that sense of wonder and energy, it was never lost. It's just waiting for you to return. Passion is often quiet at first. It doesn't shout, it nudges. And if you're moving too fast, living too distracted, or drowning in obligation, you'll miss it. That's why slowing down isn't laziness. It's how you listen. Give yourself space again. Let boredom in. Let silence speak. Because underneath the stillness, something is calling you home. And when you follow it, not for money, not for status, but for the joy of feeling alive, everything else starts to shift. You begin to remember who you are, not the version the world built, but the one you were before fear took over. So ask yourself, what have I silenced in myself for too long? What do I still love, even in secret? What would I do with my time if no one was watching or judging? The answers to those questions aren't just interesting, they're essential. Because rediscovering your passion isn't a return to the past. It's a leap into the future, into the version of you that lives with energy, clarity, and purpose. Again. Cultivate self-awareness. Most people think they know themselves, but they only know their habits, their reactions, their fears, their public mask. They go through the motions every day without ever asking, why do I do what I do? Who am I underneath the noise? Cultivating self-awareness isn't just an introspective luxury. It's a radical act of transformation. Because you can't rebuild yourself if you're building on an illusion. You have to look clearly, honestly, and without flinching at what's really there. This process begins with observation, not judgment, not self-criticism, but presence. You start noticing your patterns, the moments you shrink, the situations that trigger you, the people who drain you. You become a quiet detective in your own life, watching how your thoughts move, how your mood shifts, and where your energy goes. And slowly, you begin to see the difference between who you truly are and who you've been trained to be. Self-awareness gives you power, the kind of power that can't be faked or borrowed. Because once you understand your emotional patterns, your defense mechanisms, your unconscious behaviors, you stop being a puppet pulled by invisible strings. You begin to respond instead of react. You choose instead of repeat. You take your life off autopilot. But this takes courage, because sometimes what you discover isn't easy to accept. You might realize you've been chasing approval instead of truth. You might see how fear has shaped your identity, or that the life you've built doesn't match the values you claim to hold. That's okay. Awareness doesn't require perfection. It only asks for honesty. And honesty is the first real step toward change. If you want to rebuild yourself, you have to be willing to sit with your contradictions, to listen to the voice inside you that doesn't shout, but whispers, to ask better questions, not, what do people expect of me, but what actually matters to me. Not, how do I look, but how do I feel when I'm alone with myself. The more you listen, the more clarity you'll gain. Start with small reflections, journal without filters. Meditate, not to escape, but to observe. Ask yourself at the end of the day, where was I real? Where was I hiding? What did I avoid? What did I crave? These questions are not for performance, they're for direction. They help you see the truth in the fog, because ultimately, you can't build a life that feels like yours unless you know who you actually is. You can't break free from the past if you don't understand the beliefs that built it. You can't change your future unless you're willing to examine your present with eyes wide open. This is the inner revolution, quiet, unseen, but utterly life-changing, and it doesn't require you to be perfect, just willing to observe, willing to ask, willing to grow. So ask yourself now, where am I living on autopilot? What truths have I been avoiding? Because the most powerful transformation begins not with a breakthrough moment, but with a deeper, slower, more consistent awareness of who you are and who you're becoming. Prioritize your well-being. We tend to treat our well-being like it's something we'll get to eventually, after the deadlines, after the expectations, after the chaos settles down. But what if it's not something to add in later? What if prioritizing your well-being is the foundation on which everything else in your life stands? Because here's the truth. You can't rebuild yourself on a system that keeps burning you out. You can't grow in soil that's constantly depleted. You have to begin treating your peace, your health, your sanity, not as extras, but as essentials. Prioritizing your well-being doesn't always look dramatic or heroic. Sometimes it's as simple as saying no when you've always said yes. It's choosing rest over hustle, silence over noise, solitude over superficiality. It's walking away from people who disrespect your boundaries, even if they've been in your life for years. It's leaving the phone in another room just so you can be with your own thoughts for a while. It's protecting your energy like it actually matters, because it does. When you start placing your well-being at the center of your choices, you realize how much of your life was built around pleasing others or performing for them. You start to notice the ways you were trained to self-abandon, to ignore your body's needs, to suppress your emotions, to treat your own pain like it was inconvenient. But once you decide to reclaim your inner peace, you no longer negotiate with exhaustion. You stop measuring your worth by how productive you are or how much you can endure. True well-being is deeper than self-care trends. It's not just bubble baths or green smoothies. It's about alignment, making choices that bring your life closer to your values, your needs, your joy. It's about paying attention to how people and places affect your nervous system. It's about creating rituals that regulate you, uplift you, and remind you that you are allowed to feel good, not just survive. Sometimes the hardest part of prioritizing your well-being is the guilt that comes with it. Guilt for resting, guilt for setting boundaries, guilt for not being constantly available to others. But ask yourself, who benefits when you're constantly drained? Who wins when you neglect yourself to keep everyone else comfortable? The truth is, when you take care of yourself, you don't become selfish. You become stable, grounded, capable of showing up with more presence, not less. This is how you rebuild, not by pushing harder, but by listening deeper, by noticing what truly nourishes you and what depletes you, by understanding that your peace is not a reward to be earned after the chaos, but a practice to be prioritized inside the chaos. So from now on, before you commit to anything, ask, does this honor my well-being? Does this support the version of me I'm becoming? Because if the answer is no, then maybe it's not worth the cost. Develop healthy habits. We often underestimate how much our daily habits shape our identity, not the dramatic events, not the occasional breakthroughs, but the small, repetitive actions we perform when no one is watching. These routines, often unconscious, slowly sculpt the trajectory of our lives. And if you're serious about rebuilding yourself, you need to stop asking for change and start living like someone who's building something sacred. Because habits are either chains or tools. They will either lock you into an old version of yourself or become the daily rituals that pull you forward into something stronger. Developing healthy habits isn't about perfection. It's about consistency, about showing up for yourself, especially on the days you don't feel like it. That's when the real transformation happens. When you move, even without motivation. When you stop negotiating with your excuses and start treating your goals like promises, because that's what discipline is, a quiet, daily vote for the future you believe in. Start small. You don't need to overhaul your entire life in one day. In fact, that's usually a setup for failure. Choose one thing. Maybe it's drinking more water, stretching for 10 minutes in the morning, journaling your thoughts before bed, or spending the first hour of your day without your phone. Pick something manageable, something meaningful, and make it non-negotiable. You don't need to get it perfect. You just need to get it going. The key is to design habits that support the life you want to build, not the one you're trying to escape. Your old habits may have served a version of you that was surviving, but this new you, this version is building, becoming, rising. That requires systems that nourish, not deplete. Routines that bring clarity, not chaos. Actions that reinforce your worth, not erode it. And when you slip, because you will, don't use it as a reason to give up. Use it as data. Learn from it. Adjust your approach. Habits are not about rigidity. They're about rhythm. And rhythm is allowed to stumble as long as it keeps moving forward. Notice the things you do when you feel most grounded. The meals you eat that leave you feeling strong. The bedtime routines that actually help you sleep. The people you spend time with who make you feel expansive. The environments where your creativity flows. These are not coincidences. These are clues. Follow them. Build your habits around them. Because here's the truth. A powerful life is not built by occasional breakthroughs, but by habitual follow-through. And once you align your habits with your higher self, your progress stops being accidental and starts becoming inevitable. Embrace personal growth. Personal growth isn't a destination you reach. It's a way of moving through the world, a commitment to never settle for what's comfortable if it means staying stuck. And that's the hard part, isn't it? Growth requires you to be uncomfortable. It asks you to outgrow identities you've clung to for years. It demands you question what you once accepted without hesitation. And most of all, it forces you to step into the unknown. Not because you're fearless, but because your desire to evolve is stronger than your fear of discomfort. There's something powerful about recognizing that the version of you you're becoming doesn't exist yet. You're not just polishing what already is, you're building from the ground up. Every time you take a risk, say no to what no longer serves you, or challenge a self-limiting belief, you are literally sculpting a new identity. And that process, while often painful, is sacred. But growth isn't about being constantly in motion. Sometimes it means pausing, reflecting, listening to the quiet wisdom inside you that says, this isn't working anymore. It means noticing the patterns, the repeated mistakes, the emotional triggers, the things that keep circling back, and having the courage to interrupt them. Because what you tolerate, you teach, and what you don't repair, you repeat. So embrace the stretch. Learn to love the discomfort of not knowing exactly who you're becoming, only that you refuse to stay who you were. That uncertainty, that space between who you've been and who you're becoming. That's where transformation lives. That's where real confidence is born. Not from having it all figured out, but from trusting yourself enough to keep moving forward anyway. Surround yourself with people who don't just accept your growth, but expect it. People who challenge your blind spots. People who see your potential and reflect it back to you when you forget. Because growth isn't always visible. Sometimes it's internal. Sometimes it's you choosing not to react, not to explain yourself, not to shrink. And those are victories too. Make room for new experiences. Read what challenges your thinking. Explore ideas that unsettle you. Create things even if they're imperfect. Speak up even if your voice shakes. The process of becoming is messy, but it's in that mess that you begin to rebuild a self that's truer, bolder, and freer. And remember this, growth doesn't mean you hate where you are. It just means you believe in more. Not just for yourself, but from yourself. Because the highest version of you isn't somewhere far away. It's waiting for you to choose differently, right here, right now. Reflect on your values. Values are not just abstract ideals we post on walls or write in journals. They are the invisible architecture of our lives. They determine how we make decisions, how we treat others, how we respond to conflict, and how we measure success. And yet, so many people live disconnected from their values. They inherit beliefs from family, absorb expectations from culture, and chase goals that don't align with what actually matters to them. That's not a life. It's a performance. And eventually, it leaves you feeling hollow, even if from the outside, everything looks fine. To rebuild yourself, you must first remember what you truly stand for. Strip away the noise. Forget what looks impressive on paper. Stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What feels true to me?" Because clarity begins where comparison ends. And when you stop trying to impress and start trying to align, that's when things finally start to feel real again. Take a moment to ask yourself, what do I believe in when no one is watching? What principles would I fight for, even if they cost me comfort or approval? What traits do I admire most in others, and do I embody those same traits in my own life? These questions aren't theoretical, they're diagnostic. They expose the gap between who you say you are and how you actually live. Living by your values doesn't mean you'll always make the right choice in the eyes of others. In fact, sometimes it will mean standing alone, saying no to shortcuts, walking away from opportunities that betray your integrity. And that's hard, but it's also liberating, because once you start living from your values, you no longer need constant validation. Your decisions make sense to you, and that's peace. This is also where inner strength begins. When your actions match your beliefs, you become centered, grounded, unshakable. You stop chasing certainty in the outside world because you've built it inside yourself. You know who you are. You know what matters. And no matter what life throws at you, that knowledge becomes your anchor. But clarity about your values is not a one-time discovery. It's a lifelong refinement. You will outgrow old ideals, you will expand your understanding, and you will make mistakes. That's okay. What matters is that you keep returning to the question, does this align with who I want to be? That's the compass. That's the recalibration. Because when you build a life on values, not trends, not fear, not pressure, your growth becomes sustainable. Your relationships become more honest, and your path, while still uncertain, begins to feel deeply meaningful. You're no longer drifting, you're choosing. Set achievable goals. Big dreams inspire us, but it's the small, deliberate steps that transform them into reality. Setting achievable goals isn't about lowering your standards. It's about building momentum through consistency. Anyone can set a goal when they're motivated, but it takes wisdom to set one that still feels doable on the days when motivation disappears. And those days will come. That's why the foundation of progress must be built on something deeper than emotion. It must be built on clarity, discipline, and measurable steps. You don't have to start with a 10-year plan. In fact, sometimes the most powerful move is to define what success looks like this week. What can you do today that moves the needle even a little? What would it look like to finish the day proud of how you showed up, not for the world, but for yourself? When you break your big vision into smaller tasks, it becomes something you can work with, something you can measure. And each small win builds confidence. It whispers to your brain, "You're doing it. Keep going." And before you know it, you've built a new rhythm, a new standard. Achievable doesn't mean easy. It means realistic. It means respecting where you are today without abandoning where you want to go. Too many people burn out because they confuse ambition with urgency. They try to overhaul their lives in a week, and when they fail to keep up with their unrealistic pace, they assume something is wrong with them. But there's nothing wrong with you. There's just something wrong with the plan. A good goal stretches you, yes, but it doesn't snap you in half. It invites you to grow, not to punish yourself. And part of setting the right goals is knowing why you want them. Not every goal is worth chasing. Some goals are dressed up insecurities. Some are echoes of someone else's voice. So before you decide where you're going, ask, who am I becoming if I pursue this? If the answer excites you, that's a sign you're on the right path. If it drains you or fills you with anxiety, maybe it's time to rethink. There's also something powerful in writing your goals down. It forces clarity. It transforms a vague intention into a concrete commitment. And when you track your progress, not to judge yourself but to stay honest, you turn your goals into a conversation with your future self. Every step forward says, "I haven't forgotten you. I'm still coming for you." Let go of the need for overnight change. Great things are built slowly. You don't have to rush. You just have to keep showing up with patience, with humility, and with faith in the process. When you build your goals on discipline rather than motivation, you stop waiting for perfect conditions. You become the condition. Practice self-care routines. We often treat self-care as an afterthought, something optional, something indulgent, something we squeeze into the margins of a day already stolen by everyone else's demands. But here's the truth. Self-care is not selfish. It's not soft. It's not weakness. It's the discipline of making sure the engine of your life, your mind, your body, your energy, is fueled, protected, and honored. Because no matter how strong your ambition is, if you're constantly running on fumes, you won't last. Burnout doesn't care how noble your goals are. If you don't recharge, you break. So what does real self-care look like? It's not always candles and comfort. Sometimes it's boundaries. Sometimes it's saying no even when it feels uncomfortable. Sometimes it's taking a walk instead of scrolling. Sometimes it's sitting with your emotions instead of numbing them. It's not about pampering yourself. It's about parenting yourself. It's checking in and asking, what do I actually need right now? And then, this is the hard part, actually giving it to yourself without guilt. You wouldn't let your phone battery run to 1% every day without plugging it in. So why do you treat your own energy that way? You matter more than your deadlines. Your peace is more important than other people's expectations. And your healing is more powerful than any appearance of productivity. We've been taught to chase performance, to measure our worth by how much we accomplish. But a life that's always on the edge of depletion is not sustainable. And it's not success, it's survival. Establishing self-care routines doesn't have to be elaborate. It just needs to be intentional. That could mean a few minutes of silence in the morning to breathe and set your tone. It could mean choosing nourishing food because you want to feel strong, not just full. It could mean moving your body in ways that honor it, not punish it. Or simply turning off your phone at night so your nervous system has a chance to settle. These small acts, repeated daily, are not luxuries. They are lifelines. But self-care is also about emotional hygiene. It's taking the time to process your thoughts instead of letting them spiral. It's giving yourself space to feel and then to release. It's forgiving yourself for past mistakes, not because they didn't matter, but because you do. You're not a machine. You're not a robot. You're a human being, and you deserve care, not just when you crash, but every day before that. People will try to guilt you for choosing yourself. That's a sign you need better people. The right people will understand that when you care for yourself, you show up better for everyone else too. When you're rested, you're more present. When you're centered, you're more patient. When you're whole, you don't demand others to fill your gaps. So make it a daily ritual, not something you earn, but something you commit to. Self-care isn't an escape from responsibility. It's what allows you to carry it. It's how you protect the version of you that you're rebuilding. Because without energy, without clarity, without emotional strength, even the best version of yourself will begin to crumble under the weight of neglect. Let self-care be your quiet rebellion in a world that profits from your exhaustion. And remember, taking care of yourself is not a reward, it's a requirement. Foster meaningful relationships. In the pursuit of rebuilding yourself, one of the most underestimated forces in your growth is who you choose to let into your life and who you choose to walk away from. Relationships are not just emotional connections, they are ecosystems. They either nourish your evolution or slowly drain the energy you need to become who you're meant to be. We talk a lot about discipline, focus, self-awareness, but if your daily environment includes people who constantly plant seeds of doubt, comparison, or emotional instability, your personal growth will be suffocated at the root. Meaningful relationships don't always come with loud encouragement or dramatic gestures. Sometimes they're as simple as someone who listens without judgment, someone who reminds you of your worth when you forget, someone who challenges your excuses, not to hurt you, but because they see something more in you than you currently do. These are the relationships that become mirrors, not masks. They reflect the truth back to you, even when it's uncomfortable, and they don't let you settle for less than what you're capable of. But that kind of connection doesn't just happen. It requires intention. It requires honesty, both with yourself and with others. Ask yourself, who do I feel more myself around? Who do I feel safe to grow with? Who inspires me to keep becoming, not just staying the same? And equally important, who do I feel drained by? Who pulls me back into cycles I've been trying to escape? Sometimes the hard truth is this: the people who've been around the longest are not always the people who deserve front row seats in your next chapter. Letting go of relationships that no longer align is not an act of cruelty. It's an act of self-respect. You don't owe your future to people who only know your past. You don't have to maintain ties with those who continually cross your boundaries or make you doubt your path. That doesn't mean cutting people off coldly or without compassion, but it does mean choosing yourself even when it's hard. And it does mean creating space for the kind of connection that fuels you, not just keeps you company. Fostering meaningful relationships also means being willing to show up vulnerably. You can't expect depth if all you offer is surface. You can't build trust if you're hiding behind performance. The people who are truly for you don't need perfection. They need presence. They need honesty. They need to see the real you, even when that means admitting you're struggling. Because only when you allow yourself to be seen can you be loved for who you really are. And let's not forget, the most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. If your self-talk is toxic, if your boundaries are unclear, if you abandon yourself for the sake of approval, then even the best external relationships won't fix the internal disconnection. Foster the kind of inner dialogue that encourages, grounds, and challenges you. Be your own anchor, so others don't become your crutch. In the end, meaningful relationships are not about how many people you know. They're about how deeply you're known by the right ones. Just a few aligned souls can radically accelerate your healing, your purpose, and your power. Choose wisely, because the energy around you either builds the foundation of the life you're creating, or it silently tears it down. Unlock your creative potential. There's a quiet revolution that begins the moment you decide to stop labeling yourself. I'm not creative. I'm not an artist. I don't have talent. These phrases seem harmless, but they're declarations. They form invisible fences that keep your deeper potential buried under layers of doubt. The truth is, creativity isn't some mystical gift granted to a chosen few. It's a natural expression of being human. And unlocking your creative potential is not about becoming someone else. It's about rediscovering a part of yourself that's been waiting patiently to be let in. You don't have to paint like Van Gogh or write like Hemingway to be creative. Creativity shows up in the way you solve problems, how you rearrange your space, how you dress, how you cook, how you express your emotions, even how you make decisions. It's about approaching life with curiosity instead of fear. It's seeing not just what is, but what could be. And once you make space for that perspective, your world begins to shift. You start seeing new solutions, new opportunities, new versions of yourself. So ask yourself, when was the last time you made something, not for results, but for joy? When did you last create without overthinking, without judging, without asking if it was good enough? Rebuilding yourself means giving yourself permission to be messy, to experiment, to explore. This is how children learn. This is how great innovators operate. And this is how your own spirit starts to wake up after being numbed by the rigid routines of adulthood. Creativity also plays a key role in mental health. When your inner world is filled with anxiety, doubt, or emotional pressure, creative acts can become a release valve. They turn chaos into meaning. They help you process emotions that words can't reach. Whether it's writing in a journal, sketching a memory, or dancing through a wave of sadness, creativity becomes a silent therapy. It's a language your soul uses to speak when words fall short. And perhaps most importantly, creativity reconnects you to yourself. In a world that's constantly trying to shape you, to make you fit in, be productive, stay efficient, creativity asks, but what do you feel? What do you see? What do you want to say? It returns agency to your voice. It puts you back in the driver's seat of your own inner world. And from that place, you don't just rebuild yourself. You reinvent how you experience life itself. You don't need the perfect tools or the right environment to begin. You need one thing, the courage to begin anyway. Take out your phone and start capturing things that catch your eye. Open a blank page and write one honest sentence. Doodle in the margins while you wait in line. Follow the impulse, however small, to make something, anything. It doesn't have to impress. It just has to be real. Because the moment you stop asking, "Am I creative?" and start asking, "What wants to come through me?" you've already unlocked the door. Now it's time to walk through it. Overcome limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs are like shadows. They live quietly in the corners of your mind, unseen, but always influencing how you move through the world. They whisper things like, "You're not smart enough," "You always mess things up," or "You're too late to change." And the dangerous part? Most of the time you don't even realize you're believing them. They sound so familiar, so ordinary, that they slip into your identity unnoticed. But make no mistake, these beliefs aren't facts. They're assumptions, often inherited, absorbed or created during moments of fear or failure. You weren't born with these thoughts. You learned them. Maybe someone once told you that you were too much, too loud, too quiet, too slow. Maybe you failed once, and instead of seeing that as part of growth, you labeled yourself as someone who just can't. Maybe life knocked you down a few times, and you started to believe the fall defined you. But here's the truth. Just because something has felt true doesn't mean it is true. And just because a belief has lived in your mind for years doesn't mean it deserves to stay. To overcome limiting beliefs, you first have to notice them. Pay attention to the quiet stories you tell yourself every day, especially when things get hard. What's the first thing you think when you make a mistake? When someone criticizes you? When you face a challenge? Those thoughts are clues. Write them down. Don't filter or edit them. Just observe them. Because the moment you see a belief clearly, you begin to weaken its grip. Awareness is the first form of power. Next comes the rebellion. Once you've named a limiting belief, question it. Who told you that? Where did you learn it? Is it based on your experience or someone else's fear? Can you find one piece of evidence that contradicts it? One time you succeeded. One time you surprised yourself. One time you showed strength. Every limiting belief has a crack in its foundation, and your job is to find it, widen it, and let light in. But questioning isn't enough. You must replace these old beliefs with new, conscious ones, and this part requires repetition. It's not enough to say, "I believe I can change." You have to act on that belief. You have to behave as if it's true, even when you don't fully feel it. That's where transformation begins. You build new mental pathways through practice, not perfection. So start telling yourself different stories. Say, "I can learn from this." Say, "I may not be there yet, but I'm growing." Say, "My past does not define my future." These aren't empty affirmations. They are declarations of freedom. Each one chips away at the walls that have kept you stuck, and slowly you create space to grow into who you really are. Remember this, your thoughts are not your identity. They're habits, and habits can be changed. Rebuilding yourself means breaking down the beliefs that have quietly ruled you for years and choosing, moment by moment, to create a new reality. Manage stress effectively. Stress is not the enemy. That's a truth most people overlook. Stress, in its purest form, is a messenger. It tells you something's off, that your body, your mind, or your boundaries are being pushed in ways that feel unsafe, unbalanced, or overwhelming. The problem isn't that stress exists. The problem is that we don't know how to listen to it. We either drown in it or try to outrun it. But what if, instead of reacting blindly to stress, you learned how to work with it, to manage it with clarity and strength? Managing stress effectively starts with recognizing its presence early before it builds into burnout, breakdown, or bitterness. Most people wait too long. They ignore the signs, the short temper, the scattered mind, the inability to sleep, the constant fatigue. These aren't random, they're signals, and if you treat them like noise instead of warning lights, you'll keep crashing again and again. So begin by tuning in. Make a habit of checking in with yourself daily. Ask, where is my energy today? What's weighing on me? What can I let go of? Awareness alone can lower stress more than you think. Once you're aware, the next step is setting boundaries. And that means making peace with the word no. You can't say yes to everything and still expect to be at peace. Every yes is a commitment of time, energy, and focus. If you hand it out carelessly, you'll stretch yourself until there's nothing left. Learn to say no, kindly but firmly, when something threatens your well-being or pulls you away from your priorities. Protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's essential. But boundaries aren't enough. You also need release valves, intentional practices that allow stress to move through you instead of build inside you. For some, that's movement, walking, lifting, stretching. For others, it's stillness, journaling, meditating, or simply sitting in silence. There's no one right way. What matters is that you find something that calms your nervous system and return to it regularly, especially on the days when you feel like skipping it. That's when you need it most. There's also the mental side of stress, the part that comes from overthinking, perfectionism, or trying to control what you can't. A powerful way to reduce that kind of stress is to simplify. Ask yourself, what actually needs my attention right now? What can I do today that will matter tomorrow? What can I release because it's not mine to carry? Clarity reduces chaos. The more you simplify your focus, the less stress takes hold. Another overlooked method: connection. Talk to someone, not to fix you, but to remind you that you're not alone. Sometimes just speaking your worries out loud helps untangle them. And sometimes hearing someone say, "I felt that too," is all you need to exhale. Humans are wired for connection, and connection is medicine. Finally, understand that managing stress is not a one-time solution. It's a lifestyle. It's a daily practice of noticing, adjusting, releasing, and returning to center. You won't always get it right. Some days you'll snap. Others you'll shut down. But that's okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness and recovery. Stress will visit, but it doesn't have to stay. And it certainly doesn't have to rule you. When you learn to manage stress, not avoid it, but manage it, you reclaim your power. You show yourself that no matter what life throws at you, you can respond with grace, clarity, and strength. That's the kind of resilience that rebuilds you from the inside out. Build emotional intelligence. Most people think emotional intelligence is just about managing how you react when you're angry or sad. But it's much more than that. It's about self-mastery. It's the ability to name what you feel, to sit with discomfort without letting it take the wheel, and to respond to life in ways that align with who you want to be, not who you've been when triggered or tired. Emotional intelligence doesn't silence your emotions. It teaches you how to understand them, and that understanding, that's where your power lives. To build emotional intelligence, you must first become curious, not judgmental, about your emotions. When something upsets you, ask, what exactly am I feeling? Is it anger or is it hurt? Is it fear or is it shame dressed as pride? Most of us never learned how to name these nuances, so we lash out or shut down. But the more accurately you can describe what you feel, the more clearly you can respond. Emotions aren't enemies, they're messengers. And naming them is the first step to decoding the message. Once you've identified what you feel, the next challenge is pausing. This is where growth either happens or dies. When someone disrespects you, when life disappoints you, or when frustration bubbles up, that pause between emotion and reaction is everything. It's the space where you choose maturity over impulse, wisdom over ego. It's where you decide whether to escalate or to lead yourself. You won't always get this right, but even 1 second of pause can shift the trajectory of a conversation, a day, or a decision. That pause is where you regain control. And then there's empathy, the often forgotten skill in the emotional intelligence toolbox. To rebuild yourself, you have to understand not just your own emotional landscape, but the landscapes of others too. That doesn't mean excusing bad behavior or allowing yourself to be mistreated. It means recognizing that most people are acting from their own wounds, not with the intention of harming you. When you can see pain behind anger or insecurity behind arrogance, you protect yourself without taking things personally. That's emotional freedom. But let's not pretend this is easy. Emotional intelligence requires emotional courage. It's not easy to say, I'm feeling vulnerable, or I'm reacting from fear, especially when you've been taught to hide those things. But the bravest people aren't the ones who bottle up their emotions. They're the ones who can face them honestly without drowning in them. Courage isn't emotional avoidance. Courage is emotional clarity with calm action. And here's the quiet truth. Your future, the version of you you're trying to become, depends on this skill, because the more emotionally intelligent you are, the less you'll sabotage your progress. The less you'll push people away you actually need. The less you'll ruin your peace over things you can't control. Emotional intelligence is what keeps you steady when everything else is chaotic. It's what allows you to stand strong in a storm without turning the storm inward. So if you want to rebuild yourself, start here. Start with the ability to look inward, to tell the truth about what you feel, and to respond with presence instead of panic. Mastering your emotions doesn't mean you won't feel them. It means they won't control you. And in that mastery, you'll find a deeper version of strength, one that's quiet, one that's calm, one that cannot be shaken by anyone or anything. Celebrate small victories. Let's talk about something most people overlook on their journey of transformation. The small, quiet wins. The ones no one claps for. The ones that don't show up on Instagram. The ones that are so subtle, they're easy to dismiss. But here's the truth. If you don't learn to celebrate small victories, you'll burn out chasing big ones. Because rebuilding yourself isn't just about massive leaps. It's about the quiet steps, the ones that tell you you're still in the game. When we think about progress, we usually imagine something dramatic. Quitting the job, losing 50 pounds, launching the business. But real change rarely looks like that. More often, it's the morning you get out of bed when depression whispers, "Don't." It's the moment you say no when your old self would have said yes. It's the hour you spend learning instead of scrolling. And these moments, they matter, because they are proof that your past is not in charge anymore. That's not small, that's monumental. The danger comes when you measure your progress only by what others can see. If you rely on applause to stay motivated, you'll quit the moment it gets quiet. And it will get quiet. Growth is often invisible before it becomes undeniable. That means you have to become your own witness, your own cheerleader, your own reminder that every time you choose the better habit, every time you resist the old trigger, every time you act like the future version of yourself, you are winning. And those small wins compound. One clean meal turns into a week of energy. One hard conversation leads to a breakthrough in your relationships. One journal entry reconnects you with your purpose. But if you don't pause to notice, to acknowledge, to say, "That mattered," you'll miss how far you've come. You'll still feel behind, even when you're actually ahead, just because the milestones don't look like the ones in your head. Celebrating doesn't mean throwing a party. It can be as simple as writing it down, taking a breath, saying, "That was hard, and I did it anyway." Give yourself credit for what no one else sees, because if you don't, you'll keep chasing validation that may never come. And worse, you'll never feel good enough, even when you're doing everything right. This shift in mindset, this ability to honor the small, builds something powerful: self-respect. Not the kind that comes from recognition, but the kind that comes from integrity. The kind that whispers, "I showed up for myself today." And that whisper becomes a roar over time. It becomes your fuel, your anchor, your proof that you're not just dreaming of change. You're living it, inch by inch. So if today you did something hard, even if it was tiny, stop and acknowledge it. If you resisted the urge to numb out, or took one step toward your goals, or simply breathed through the stress instead of reacting, that's progress. Don't wait for permission to feel proud. Give it to yourself now, because every step you take matters. Every time you choose yourself over your patterns, you're rebuilding, and that deserves to be seen. Embrace lifelong learning. Here's where we talk about the trait that separates those who grow from those who stay stuck. The willingness to keep learning, not just once in a while, not just when life forces you to, but every single day. Because the truth is, you're not a finished product. You never will be. And that's not a flaw. That's your greatest advantage. The moment you believe you know everything is the moment you stop evolving. Lifelong learning isn't about collecting certificates or reading 100 books. It's a mindset, a posture, a quiet, humble curiosity that asks, what else can I discover about myself, about life, about what's possible? You see, growth doesn't happen when you reach a destination. It happens in motion. The most fulfilled people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who have all the answers. They're the ones who never stop asking better questions. They don't see failure as an ending. They see it as feedback. They don't see mistakes as shameful. They see them as instruction. They aren't obsessed with looking smart. They're committed to actually becoming wiser. There's a difference. Think of your life as a garden. If you stop watering it, stop learning, stop exploring, stop trying, it won't stay the same. It will wither, because nothing in life stays neutral. You're either growing or shrinking. There is no pause button. That's why this commitment to lifelong learning is so powerful. It keeps your mind sharp, your heart open, and your spirit flexible. And when the storms of life come, and they will, you'll bend, not break. Because you've trained yourself to adapt, to adjust, to evolve. But let's make this practical. Learning doesn't have to be complicated. It can mean reading one paragraph of something meaningful instead of spending an hour scrolling. It can be a 10-minute reflection at the end of your day. What did I do well? What can I do better. It can be listening to someone who thinks differently from you, not to argue, but to understand. It can be noticing your own reactions and asking, where did that come from? And most importantly, it can be forgiving yourself and deciding to try again, because that too is learning. And don't underestimate the power of learning from people, not just books. Everyone you meet knows something you don't. Every experience, even the painful ones, can teach you something vital, if you're willing to pay attention. If you can stop reacting long enough to reflect, life is a ruthless but brilliant teacher. The question is, are you listening? There's also a quiet confidence that grows when you embrace this path. You stop being intimidated by what you don't know, because you know you can learn it. You stop pretending to be perfect, because you value growth more than image. You stop comparing your timeline to others, because you're focused on progress, not perfection. That's freedom, that's strength. That's what makes you resilient in a world that's constantly changing. So don't wait for life to force you into growth through crisis. Choose it now. Stay curious, stay humble, stay open. Rebuild your life on the foundation of someone who never stops learning, and you'll be unstoppable. Nurture your inner strength. There's a kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. Not loud, not aggressive, not dressed in pride. It's quiet, consistent, and unshakable. It doesn't seek attention because it's rooted in something deeper than image. This is the kind of strength you need to rebuild your life. Not the flashy kind that lifts weights or dominates rooms, but the steady kind that lifts you, when no one is watching, when everything hurts, and when quitting seems like the easier path. Inner strength is not found in the absence of pain, but in your willingness to meet pain with clarity, with resolve, and with discipline. So, how do you nurture this kind of strength? It begins in your choices, small, daily, deliberate. It's in waking up when you said you would, even if you didn't feel like it. It's in doing the work, even when no one's clapping. It's in choosing truth over comfort, choosing integrity over shortcuts, choosing growth over temporary relief. These aren't glamorous decisions, but they're sacred ones, because each time you choose discipline, you build a layer of trust with yourself, and that trust becomes your armor. Most people think strength is something you're born with, that some people just have it and others don't. That's not true. Strength is built like a muscle, and just like any muscle, it only grows through resistance. That means you don't get stronger by avoiding discomfort. You get stronger by facing it again and again, until what once broke you becomes what now builds you. And yes, you will break sometimes. That's part of the process. But inner strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about being rebuildable. It's about knowing that even if you collapse, you will rise. Because you've trained yourself to rise. Because you've made resilience a habit, not a performance. Because you've stopped looking for strength in other people and started looking for it inside yourself. And part of nurturing that inner strength means guarding it. You can't pour energy into everyone and everything and expect to remain whole. You have to learn the discipline of saying no, not because you're selfish, but because you're focused. You have to protect your peace, your routines, your mental space, the places where your strength is cultivated. That's not weakness, that's strategy, that's self-respect. Also, let go of the illusion that strong people don't feel deeply. They do. They just don't let those feelings run the show. They process, they reflect, and then they act, not from chaos, but from clarity. You have that ability too. It's not reserved for the few. It's within you, waiting to be chosen, developed, lived. And here's something else. The strongest people often look the most ordinary. They don't need to advertise their strength because they embody it. They don't need to dominate the conversation because they've mastered the art of silence. They don't need to be the center of attention because they've made peace with who they are, and they don't need the world to validate it. When you nurture your inner strength, you stop being reactive. You stop being shaken by every comment, every rejection, every delay. You learn to pause, to breathe, to stand your ground with grace. And that changes everything. You become the eye in the storm, the calm in the chaos, the person others quietly admire, not for what you have, but for what you carry inside. So ask yourself right now, what are you doing every day to strengthen your inner world? What habits are feeding your courage, your resilience, your self-trust? And what needs to change, not tomorrow, but today? Because peace isn't found by escaping life. It's found by becoming strong enough to stand in it fully. Improve work-life balance. There's a silent epidemic that too many people accept as normal, the constant creeping erosion of life by work. We don't notice it at first. One skipped lunch, one late night, one weekend, just catching up. And before you know it, your calendar is full, but your soul is empty. Your inbox is cleared, but your joy is gone. You're achieving more and feeling less. Work-life balance isn't a luxury. It's survival. And it's one of the most important acts of self-respect you'll ever commit to. We live in a culture that often glorifies burnout. People wear exhaustion like a badge of honor. Hustle is romanticized. Productivity is mistaken for purpose. But let's be honest, what's the point of building success if it costs you your health, your presence, your relationships, your peace? That's not achievement. That's slow self-abandonment. Improving your work-life balance starts by redefining success. It means understanding that your worth isn't measured by how busy you are or how many hours you log. You are not a machine. You are not a cog in someone else's system. You are a human being, and humans are not built to run endlessly without rest, joy, or connection. You're built to live, and living well means knowing when to work and when to walk away. Start by creating boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are bridges to a healthier version of you. They are how you protect your time, your energy, your sanity, and boundaries aren't just for others, they're also for yourself. You need to learn to close the laptop at a certain time, to stop checking your phone every 5 minutes, to take breaks that are real, not just guilt-ridden pauses. You need to schedule your life with the same commitment you schedule your work. And then you need to honor those commitments like they matter, because they do. Balance isn't just about time, it's also about energy. Some tasks drain you more than others. Some people do too. So pay attention. Audit your days. Where are you losing energy unnecessarily? What routines are stealing your clarity instead of building it? You may not be able to control every aspect of your work, but you can control how you recover from it, how you breathe, how you recharge, how you create space for the things that refill you. And when you make space, fill it with intention. Don't just unplug, reconnect with yourself, with your family, with silence, with hobbies that remind you who you are beyond your job title. Balance isn't about escape. It's about realignment. It's about remembering that your life isn't just something you do after hours. It's the main event. Work is just a part of it, not the whole. Also, stop waiting for permission to prioritize yourself. No one's going to give it to you. You have to claim it. And yes, at first, it might feel selfish. But what's more selfish taking care of yourself, or neglecting yourself until others have to deal with the consequences of your collapse. Think about it. Your well-being isn't just for you. It's for everyone who depends on you being whole, present, and emotionally available. Finally, improving your work-life balance requires constant adjustment. There will be busy seasons. There will be deadlines. But if you've built a strong foundation, if you've made space for rest, reflection, and connection, you won't be shaken by the waves. You'll know how to return to center. You'll know how to live, not just survive. Balance isn't something you find once. It's something you build daily, with choices, with boundaries, with courage. Discover your purpose. There comes a moment, often quiet, often unexpected, when you look around and ask, is this all there is? Maybe you've followed the rules, met the expectations, achieved what others said would make you happy. And yet, something's missing. That something is purpose. It's not a bonus. It's the core of why you wake up. Without it, success feels empty. Progress feels aimless. Even rest doesn't feel earned because you're not sure what you're resting from. Discovering your purpose isn't about finding some grand destiny written in the stars. It's about turning inward and listening to the deepest part of you that's been quietly asking for more. Purpose isn't something you stumble upon in a single moment of clarity. It's something you uncover by living intentionally, by following your curiosity, by paying attention to what moves you and what drains you. The clues are always there, in the things that make you feel alive, in the moments you lose track of time, in the tasks you do even if no one ever noticed. But many people silence those clues. They override them with logic, fear, or social pressure. They think, that can't be it, that's too small, that's too risky. And in doing so, they walk away from the very thing that could make life meaningful. To discover your purpose, you have to be willing to get uncomfortable. You have to step outside the script, the career path someone else chose for you, the identity you built to please others, the safety net of expectations. It takes courage to ask, what do I want? And even more courage to act on the answer. But that's the work. Purpose isn't passive, it's pursued. And it's not always obvious. It might not come with a job title. It might not pay well at first. It might feel like starting over. But if it gives you energy instead of taking it, if it lights a fire in you, that's your sign. You don't need to have all the answers right away. You just need to move in the direction that feels most real. Purpose evolves as you evolve. It deepens with every experience, every mistake, every insight. It's not a straight line. It's a series of moments where you feel deeply aligned with who you are and what you're doing. And then you build more of those moments, one choice at a time. And here's something important. Your purpose doesn't have to be world-changing to be life-changing. You don't have to save the planet to matter. Sometimes your purpose is to be a steady presence in someone's life, to create beauty, to write, to teach, to build, to nurture, to question, to heal. The scale doesn't define the significance. What matters is that it's yours. The danger of not discovering your purpose is that life starts to happen to you, not through you. You drift, you numb out, you chase the next thing hoping it will feel like enough. But nothing outside of you will fill that space. Purpose is the only thing that can. So start by asking better questions. What excites you? What pains you to see in the world? What would you do even if it wasn't required? What version of you feels most authentic? Journal, reflect, talk to people who inspire you, and then experiment, try. fail, learn, adjust. The more you act, the more clarity you gain. Purpose doesn't shout. It whispers. It asks you to listen when the world is loud, to trust yourself when the path is unclear, to believe that your life is not random. It's a raw material waiting to be shaped with intention. And when you begin to live from that place, when your days are aligned with something deeper than comfort or approval, everything changes. You stop chasing, you start creating, you move with direction, you lead with meaning. Enhance mental clarity. Your mind is your most powerful tool, but it's also the easiest to overload. In a world that never stops shouting, clarity becomes a rare form of strength. Most people don't lack intelligence or ambition. They lack mental stillness. They try to make big decisions with a fogged-up windshield. They try to create a meaningful life while constantly reacting to noise. But a distracted mind cannot build anything lasting. If you truly want to rebuild yourself, you need to make clarity a non-negotiable. Mental clarity isn't about knowing everything. It's about seeing what truly matters. It's about cutting through the static so you can hear your own thoughts again. That starts with removing what doesn't serve you. The endless scroll, the constant multitasking, the unfiltered access that people have to your time and attention. All of these come at a cost. Every notification, every irrelevant conversation, every unnecessary worry. It chips away at your focus, your presence, your peace. You cannot think clearly in chaos. So simplify. Declutter your digital life. Say no to meetings and conversations that don't align with your goals. Wake up and spend the first moments of the day in silence, not on a screen. Get comfortable doing one thing at a time. Your brain is not built for constant context switching. The more you fragment your focus, the less effective you become at everything. Clarity is born in stillness, not speed. Another essential part of mental clarity is learning to separate what's yours from what isn't. Not every problem belongs to you. Not every opinion requires a response. Not every emotion needs to be analyzed to death. Sometimes clarity is choosing not to engage, to sit back and observe, to hold space without judgment. When you stop taking everything personally, you create room to think objectively, and that's where wisdom begins. Sleep, nutrition, and movement also play a role in your mental sharpness. A tired mind is a cluttered mind. A sugar-crashed brain can't think long-term. A sedentary life dampens creativity. So, no, clarity isn't just a mental pursuit. It's a whole life discipline. It's the outcome of how you treat your body, what you allow into your environment, and the standards you hold for your inner world. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is pause. Take a breath, step away, write things down. When your thoughts are swirling, put them on paper. When a decision feels overwhelming, break it into smaller pieces. Clarity often hides behind the illusion of complexity. But the truth is, most of what we face isn't complicated. We've just allowed too much noise to enter the conversation. You'll know you're regaining clarity when you stop chasing urgency, when you start making decisions based on values, not emotions, when your mind feels less like a battlefield and more like a sanctuary. That's when your creativity returns. That's when your vision sharpens. That's when life stops feeling like a reaction and starts feeling like a direction. Mental clarity isn't a luxury, it's a requirement for building the life you actually want. Because without it, you'll keep solving the wrong problems, following the wrong paths, and wondering why fulfillment feels out of reach. But when your mind is clear, your choices become powerful, your time becomes intentional, and your energy starts working for you, not against you. Develop resilient strategies. Life doesn't warn you before it breaks your plans. It doesn't ask if you're ready before it tests your patience, your strength, your beliefs. This is why resilience is not just a nice quality, it's a survival skill. The people who keep rising are not necessarily the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones who have strategies, systems, mental frameworks that kick in when everything else falls apart. Resilience isn't about pretending things don't hurt. It's about having a process that allows you to hurt and still move forward. We often think of resilience as brute endurance, just pushing through no matter what. But true resilience is intelligent. It's not about grinding blindly. It's about knowing when to pause and reflect, when to adapt, when to let go. A resilient strategy doesn't just help you survive the chaos, it helps you learn from it. It turns every setback into a source of data. Every disappointment becomes feedback. Every failure becomes a mirror. The first step is to stop personalizing pain. Life is not out to get you. Setbacks are not attacks on your worth. They're part of the terrain, not signs that you're on the wrong path. When you stop interpreting every obstacle as a verdict, you gain your power back. You begin to see the situation more clearly, without the emotional fog that often distorts your ability to respond wisely. That's where strategy starts, in objectivity. Next, prepare before the storm hits. Don't wait to feel broken before thinking about how to repair. Build routines that protect your mindset. Develop habits that ground you. Journaling, silence, movement, nature, meaningful conversations. These are not luxuries, they're your armor. When life shakes your foundation, these are the anchors that hold you steady. The key isn't to avoid being knocked down, it's to build a system that gets you back up faster, every time. One of the most underestimated resilience tools is flexibility. Rigidity shatters under pressure, but flexibility, the ability to shift plans without losing sight of your values, that's strength. When your identity isn't tied to a single outcome, you become untouchable. You stop collapsing every time something goes differently than you hoped. Instead of breaking down, you bend, you adjust, and you continue, not with bitterness, but with wisdom. Another essential strategy is to define your why. Why are you rebuilding yourself? Why are you choosing this path? When your purpose is clear, your patience gets stronger. Your commitment becomes deeper. When you have a powerful reason, you stop letting small problems derail you. You begin to see each challenge not as a threat, but as part of the preparation for something greater. Also, create space to process pain. Denial is not resilience. Pushing emotions down will only cause them to explode later. Have outlets. Talk to someone, write it down, sit in silence and breathe through the weight. Resilient people don't avoid discomfort. They confront it with compassion. They allow themselves to grieve, to feel, to heal, without making those emotions their identity. Most importantly, believe in your ability to rebuild again and again. No matter how many times life knocks you over, remind yourself, I know how to get back up. That's a form of confidence no one can give you. It's earned, it's built, and it becomes your secret weapon when everything else fails. Resilient strategies aren't just about surviving what's hard, they're about transforming it into something useful. You don't have to pretend it didn't hurt, but you can choose not to stay broken, because life will keep testing you. And every time you'll be more prepared, more grounded, more capable. That's the power of strategy over emotion. structure over chaos, intentionality over reaction. Foster self-acceptance. There's a quiet war that many people are fighting every single day, not against the world, but against themselves. A war between who they are and who they think they should be, between what they feel and what they believe they're allowed to feel. This internal resistance creates tension, shame, self-criticism, and worst of all, disconnection. Because how can you build anything meaningful in your life if the foundation, your relationship with yourself, is built on rejection? Self-acceptance doesn't mean settling. It doesn't mean giving up on growth. It means finally deciding to stop fighting with your reflection and start understanding it. It means saying to yourself, I see where I've been. I see the mistakes, the flaws, the regrets, and I still choose to stand with myself. Because no matter how much you change, no transformation will feel safe if it's built on self-hate. Real change, sustainable, peaceful, and powerful, only grows when it's rooted in compassion. When you accept yourself, you stop seeking permission to exist. You stop apologizing for your sensitivity, your ambition, your desires, your imperfections. You start taking ownership of your story, not as something to be ashamed of, but as something sacred. Every chapter, even the painful ones, becomes a testament to your humanity, and that's what makes you real. That's what makes you relatable. That's what makes your growth authentic. Too often, we confuse self-acceptance with self-delusion. We think, if I accept myself, I'll stop pushing forward. But it's actually the opposite. The more you accept who you are, the more energy you free up to become who you're meant to be. You stop wasting time pretending, performing, comparing. You start using that energy to focus, build, create. Acceptance becomes fuel, not a cage. You must also unlearn the voices that taught you you're not enough. Many of us are walking around carrying beliefs that were handed to us by parents, teachers, society, culture. Messages that said you had to be thinner, richer, quieter, louder, more masculine, more feminine, more normal. But who gets to decide what's normal? Who told you your real self wasn't good enough? And more importantly, why do you still believe them? This is where the work begins. Challenge the inner critic. Notice the patterns. Catch the moment when you start to self-reject, when you judge your own emotions, when you call yourself weak for feeling or lazy for resting. Ask yourself, would I speak to someone I love this way? Would I ever treat a child the way I treat myself? And if not, why do I tolerate that treatment from me? Part of self-acceptance is also accepting your journey, your timeline, your pace. Stop comparing your life to someone else's highlight reel. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where your growth is happening. And if you keep showing up, keep being honest, keep honoring your truth, you'll get there. Not on their path, not on their schedule, but on yours. And let's be clear, acceptance isn't a feeling you magically arrive at. It's a practice. Some days it's easy. Other days it's a decision you make minute by minute, especially on the hard days, when you feel like you're failing, when you fall back into old habits, when your mind wants to spiral. That's when you double down. That's when you say, I may not like how I feel right now, but I still stand with myself. Because if you don't stand with yourself, who will? The world is full of criticism, of judgment. You can't control that, but you can decide not to join them. You can be the one person who shows up for you with patience, with understanding, with grace. And from that place, from that rooted self-compassion, you become unstoppable. Because you're not fighting yourself anymore. You're walking beside yourself. And that is where real power lives. Unlock your full potential. Most people never touch even a fraction of who they could be, not because they aren't smart enough, talented enough, or capable enough, but because they don't believe it's allowed. They stay in roles they've outgrown, relationships that suppress them, and environments that dim their light. Why? Because somewhere along the way they learned to play small. They were taught to avoid making others uncomfortable, to not shine too brightly, to not ask for too much. And over time, that conditioning becomes a prison, one you start to call personality. But your potential isn't static. It's not some mysterious, unreachable ideal. It's alive, it's dynamic, and it expands every time you challenge the version of yourself that says, "This is all I am." You don't unlock your full potential by waiting to feel ready. You unlock it by doing the uncomfortable thing before you feel like you can, by saying yes to the growth that scares you, by leaning into discomfort not as a punishment, but as a signpost that says, "You're headed somewhere new." The truth is, there is no secret formula. The one big break is a myth. Most people who seem like they've unlocked their greatness didn't do it through one dramatic event. They did it by making one small decision after another that honored their vision. They got up on days they didn't feel like it. They studied when no one was watching. They practiced in the dark until their excellence became visible in the light. The world calls them lucky, but luck is just the reward for relentless alignment with your purpose. To unlock your potential, you also have to confront your limitations, especially the ones you've placed on yourself. That little voice that says, "You can't, you're too late, you don't belong." It's not the truth. It's a memory, a whisper from someone else's fear that got lodged in your head. And every time you obey it, you make it stronger. But every time you defy it, even just a little, you start writing a new story. One where you are the author, not the echo. You don't have to overhaul your life overnight. Start with one habit, one conversation, one risk. Potential grows through motion. Clarity comes through action. Stop trying to map out the entire journey before you take a step. The next version of you doesn't need a perfect plan. It needs a decision. A decision to stop shrinking. A decision to stop settling. A decision to rise. And don't confuse humility with hiding. Being humble doesn't mean denying your gifts. It means using them with intention, not arrogance. It means realizing that your strength is not a threat. It's a tool to build, to help, to lead. The world doesn't need more people dimming themselves to make others feel comfortable. It needs people who are fully alive, fully lit up, and willing to set the example of what's possible. Your full potential isn't just about achievement. It's about alignment. Are you living in a way that honors who you truly are? Are your choices guided by your inner compass or by fear of judgment? Because the moment you stop outsourcing your direction and start listening inward, that's when the shift happens. That's when your life starts to feel real, rooted, and right. And maybe the most important thing, unlocking your potential is not a one-time event. It's a lifestyle, a mindset, a vow to yourself that you will no longer play small just because it's safe. You'll feel resistance. You'll question yourself. But if you keep choosing growth, even when it's hard, even when it's slow, you'll look back one day and realize, I didn't just unlock my potential, I lived it. Cultivate gratitude. Gratitude isn't just a polite reaction to receiving something good. It's a powerful mindset shift that rewires how you experience life. It's the lens that transforms lack into abundance, pain into wisdom, and the ordinary into something sacred. And the most beautiful part, gratitude is always available. You don't have to wait for everything to go right to be thankful. In fact, the most profound gratitude is often born in the middle of chaos, uncertainty, and struggle. Too often, we postpone gratitude. We tell ourselves, "I'll be thankful when I make more money, when I'm in a better relationship, when I'm finally where I want to be." But life doesn't wait. Time keeps moving. And if you keep delaying appreciation, you'll find yourself constantly chasing the next thing, only to feel empty when you get it. Gratitude is not the result of fulfillment, it's the foundation of it. When you start with appreciation, you stop needing life to be perfect in order to feel peace. Gratitude is also one of the fastest ways to pull yourself out of a negative mental spiral. When your mind is consumed by what's wrong, what's missing, what's unfair, gratitude interrupts that pattern. It forces you to look up, to see what's still good, what's still working, what's still worth fighting for. It doesn't erase your problems, but it changes your posture. And when your posture changes, so does your perspective. You're no longer a victim of your circumstances. You become a participant in your healing. This practice isn't about toxic positivity or pretending everything is okay when it's not. True gratitude isn't blind, it's brave. It sees the pain and chooses to say, "Even here, I can find meaning." It sees the flaws and says, "Still, there is something to honor." It's about refusing to let bitterness take root, even when you have every reason to. It's about choosing to keep your heart open, even when the world tempts you to close it. Start small. Don't wait for grand miracles. Begin by noticing the little things, the warmth of sunlight on your face, the quiet of early morning, the fact that you woke up today with another chance to begin again. Write down 3 things each evening that made you smile, taught you something, or reminded you of your strength. The more you look for reasons to be grateful, the more reasons appear. Not because the world changes, but because you do. Gratitude also makes you more generous. When you feel full, you don't hoard, you share. You become a source of light, rather than someone constantly seeking it. You lift others without losing yourself. You give without needing to get. And in a world that often teaches us to compete, compare, and complain, being grounded in gratitude is a radical act of peace. Let it become your default, not your reaction to rare events, but your foundation for every day. Let it shape how you speak to people, how you view your body, how you treat your time. Let it be the voice in your head that says, "Even if I'm not where I want to be yet, I'm grateful for how far I've come, and I trust what's still ahead." Because in the end, gratitude doesn't just make you feel good, it makes you resilient. It turns hardship into depth. It transforms loss into legacy, and it reminds you that no matter what's happening around you, there is still something beautiful within you that cannot be taken. Embrace change with courage. Change is one of the few guarantees in life, and yet it remains one of the most feared. We cling to the familiar, even when it hurts us, even when it limits us, because comfort is seductive. It tells us, "At least you know how this feels, at least you know what to expect." But here's the paradox. The very change you resist might be the doorway to the life you've always wanted. To rebuild yourself, you must not only accept change, but learn to walk into it willingly, with your eyes open and your heart steady. Think about how much energy we waste trying to resist the inevitable. We delay decisions. We stay in environments that drain us. We replay old narratives, trying to make sense of what's falling apart, instead of stepping into what's possible. We tell ourselves that it's not the right time, that we need more clarity, more courage, more support. But courage is not something you wait for. It's something you cultivate by taking the first step, especially when you're uncertain. Real courage is not the absence of fear. It's the ability to move forward despite it. It's standing at the edge of the unknown and saying, "I don't know what's ahead, but I trust myself to figure it out." It's releasing the need to control every outcome and instead choosing to grow, no matter how uncomfortable that growth may be. Because the truth is, every version of your future self, the stronger, wiser, freer version, lives on the other side of some kind of change. Often, we think we're afraid of change itself, but what we're really afraid of is loss. The loss of identity, routine, relationships, or certainty. That fear is valid. But what if you reframe it? What if, instead of loss, you saw space being made for something better? What if letting go of what you've outgrown is not the end, but the beginning of alignment? You've survived change before. Think about that. There were moments you thought would break you, but you adapted, you restructured, you evolved. You have proof that you can handle transitions, even when they feel like chaos. The more you practice embracing change with courage, the more you realize your resilience isn't conditional. It's already within you. You just have to keep trusting it. Start small. Embrace change in your routines. Switch up your environment. Say yes to something that stretches you. Say no to something that drains you. Little acts of courage build the muscle you'll need when bigger shifts come. And they will come, because life keeps moving. The question isn't whether change will happen. The question is, will you meet it with fear or with faith? There's power in saying, "I don't have to know everything before I begin. I just need to be willing. Willing to grow. Willing to stumble. Willing to try again." That kind of bravery doesn't require a perfect plan, just a commitment to not let fear dictate your future. And when it gets hard, because it will, remind yourself that courage isn't loud. It's not about grand gestures or public declarations. Sometimes it's just a quiet whisper that says, "Keep going." It's showing up on the days when you'd rather give up. It's trusting the process, even when results are slow. So let change come. Invite it. Let it shake up your comfort zones and rearrange your assumptions. Let it burn away the false stability you've been clinging to and reveal the strength you forgot you had. Let it make you braver, clearer, more alive. Because when you embrace change with courage, you're not just surviving, you're evolving, and that's the path to becoming someone who doesn't just react to life, but shapes it with intention. Unlock your authentic self. There's a version of you that doesn't need to prove anything. A version that isn't performing, pleasing, or pretending. That version, your most authentic self, is not something you need to create from scratch. It's not hidden in a book or buried beneath a list of goals. It's already inside you, patiently waiting to be remembered. And the journey of rebuilding yourself, at its core, is really about returning home to that truth. You were born whole, before the world told you who to be, how to act, what was acceptable or lovable. You were enough. But life layers us. Expectations, labels, comparisons, shame. We begin to wear masks to survive, to fit in, to be accepted. And over time we forget what we even look like without them. Reclaiming your authenticity means gently peeling away those layers. Not all at once, not with force, but with intention, honesty, and courage. It starts with asking the hard questions. What do I believe because I've truly thought it through? And what do I believe because I was told to? What brings me joy, not just approval? Who am I when no one is watching? The answers aren't always immediate. Sometimes they whisper. Sometimes they come in moments of solitude, or after a breakdown, or in the quiet peace of finally saying no to something that never felt right. Authenticity isn't about being loud or rebellious. It's about being aligned. It's the internal sense that your thoughts, words, and actions are in harmony, that you are living from the inside out, not the outside in. And that kind of alignment brings a different kind of peace, not the peace of comfort, but the peace of integrity, of knowing that even if others don't approve, you are not betraying yourself. When you live authentically, your energy shifts. You attract relationships that see you, not your mask. You build a life that feels fulfilling, not performative. You stop chasing validation because you realize the deepest form of acceptance is self-acceptance. And ironically, when you stop trying to impress the world, the right people are drawn to you, not because of your image, but because of your essence. But make no mistake, living authentically requires bravery. You may outgrow certain roles, environments, and even people. Some will not understand the new version of you because it disrupts the comfort of who they believed you to be. That's okay. Let them. The cost of authenticity is losing what's false. The reward is becoming free. Your authentic self isn't perfect. It has flaws, contradictions, and wounds, but it's real, it's alive, and it's powerful in a way no mask could ever be. When you honor that self, when you trust it, speak from it, and act through it, you stop living on autopilot. You start making choices that reflect your truth, not your fear. So if you feel lost, don't look for a new identity to wear. Look within. Reconnect with the child who used to dream boldly, love freely, and speak honestly. That version of you didn't need to earn worth. It simply existed in it. That's still you. Always has been. Rebuilding yourself doesn't mean becoming someone else. It means finally removing what was never you to begin with. And when that happens, when you unlock your authentic self, you'll realize you were never broken. You were just buried under everything you thought you had to be. And now you're free. You were never meant to stay hidden in the background of your own life. You were never meant to live on autopilot, disconnected from your passions, your power, your truth. Rebuilding yourself isn't about becoming someone new to impress the world. It's about finally becoming someone real for yourself. And that begins the moment you decide to stop drifting, to stop doubting, and to stop delaying your return to who you were always meant to be. Yes, it's hard. Yes, some days will feel heavy. But every step you take toward yourself, no matter how small, no matter how quiet, is a revolution. One that says, I will no longer abandon myself to be accepted. I will no longer shrink to fit into a world that has forgotten how to value depth. That's the power of this journey. You don't just rebuild your routines or your habits or your productivity. You rebuild your self-respect, your peace, your soul. So let today be the day you choose presence over performance, depth over distraction, purpose over people-pleasing. Let today be the day you look in the mirror and decide, I'm not waiting anymore, I'm becoming. Because the life you dream of isn't found somewhere far away. It's shaped in the quiet hours of your discipline, your reflection, your choices. Rebuild yourself, slowly, intentionally, fully, and let your focus be on you every single day. You deserve a life that feels like yours. If this episode meant something to you, share it with someone who needs it. And if you're ready for more, for deeper growth, clarity, and strength, make sure you subscribe, because this is only the beginning.